So, as you can see, our title page here is Southbridge Veterans Monuments Initiative. It's the conceptual design that we came up with. And I want to give you a little bit of history behind how this design actually came about before I turn it over to Joe as he goes over the actual design itself. So as you can see, some of you can see that I attached some pictures of our monuments throughout the town, either neighborhood monuments or larger monuments like the World War I monument. Over the years, they've started to rot, they've started to decay, even the flagpoles have started to wither away, and we've had to take them down. We've actually had to move some of the neighborhood monuments, which we have 8 in town, to different locations. And we can also take a look at, I have a picture also as well about the accessibility to some of these monuments that we have in town. So a couple years ago, Mr. Trombley, who used to be the Veteran Service Officer for the town of Southbridge, approached me, actually myself and my wife, and had mentioned that for years, a lot of veterans had talked about taking these neighborhood monuments, relocating them in certain areas or combining them in one certain area. So as my wife and I were driving that evening, we had a conversation about it, and we said, why can't we do this? You know, if you take a look at the monuments that are around town, put all over the place, they haven't been taken care of. So knowing that other veterans and older veterans had this conversation about putting these neighborhood monuments in one location during our rebuild of the Veterans Council and our changing of bylaws, one thing that I challenged the Veterans Council with was to come with an idea of how to better our community by putting these monuments in one location. So I actually talked to Ms. Blakely, who was our DPW director, and we had this conversation, and she recommended Mr. Cohen here. And one thing that we talked to Mr. Cohen about was the accessibility and the care for these monuments. Mr. Cohen also was instrumental in our rail trail design as well. And another thing that we talked to him about was not knowing the history behind these monuments, the legacies, the individuals. So when I talk about accessibility, I talk about the Vietnam and the Italian American over at the Rotary, where you have names of those men and women who served our country, but you can't get there unless you are dodging traffic. Hiker monuments, the same way. Sure. We also had an issue with some of the neighborhood monuments on the same issues, but nobody knew who these individuals were. And actually, I did a speech a couple years ago on a Mr. Gerard, and come to find out, I believe it was Councilor Daniel's great uncle. And I gave it during Memorial Day, but I would have never known, coming here 11 years ago, that these monuments existed if I hadn't joined the Veterans Council. So, Mr. Cohen came together with a design. Man, I'm going to be frankly honest, at first it kind of threw me for a loop because it was just a lot different than I expected when it came to the design. As we've had conversations with the Historical Commission, as we have talked to different veterans, residents of this community, we found out we just didn't want to do one park. We decided to do 2 parks. And the reason being is because the one park that we actually wanted to get rid of initially has a lot of historical value to this community. A, it's the first park, public park, in the town of Southbridge. B, it's actual Veterans Memorial Park. And the only way you can remove that park, make it into a parking lot, is for the state legislators to vote to remove it. So with that in mind, we decided to keep an agenda with 2 parks. The first park being right across the street from the town hall, which is called the World War Memorial Park. Not the World War I, because when it was dedicated, there hadn't been a second war yet. Nobody would know that because there is no sign up there. It's just a World War I monument. And the flagpole itself is starting to rot and decay, and so is the monument in a sense. So a little bit of history on this is the World War Memorial Park is located next to the fire station, dedicated March 14th, 1938. It was the first public park in Southbridge, as I stated before, and it was paid by World War County bonus money. If anybody knows their history, there was bonus money that was given to the soldiers, the towns, and also the counties. Well, they used some of that money to pay for it. Also, they utilized town funds at that time. And overall, it was a $30,000 project. About $12,000 for the monument, about $18,000, I believe, for the purchase of the park itself, or the property. So the intent behind the Veterans Council for this park itself is to rededicate it. And Mr. Cohen's going to go over that in a second. But to rededicate it with new landscaping, ADA compliant sidewalks, clean up the monument itself, flagpole, and you'll see that in the design. The second park is Dresser Memorial Park. Now, that is where the cannon's at, that's where the auxiliary monument is at, the World War II, Vietnam, Korean War monument, also the Honor Roll monument. And Mr. Cohen will go over that as well, but a little history on the Dresser Memorial Park was located on Main Street across from Oak Ridge Cemetery. It was deeded to the town in 1950. Actually, there's 2 lots there. The deed was the park is named after Henry C. Dresser. Robert Dresser and his wife, I think it was Judith or Judy Dresser, are the ones who dedicated or deeded that over to the town. I believe the town for those 2 lots paid $20, or the town paid $20 for those 2 lots. Now, the interesting thing about this in the deeds, it can only be utilized for 3 things. A park, which it is now, an auditorium, or a town hall. If you were to ever put a town hall there, or an auditorium, you'd have to call it Dresser Hall. So that's some facts and history behind it, but there are war memorials there right now, or veterans memorials there right now, and so we saw a good fit for this new monument or new initiative to go in. One thing I wanted to show you before I pass it over for the World War Memorial Park is the current locations on a map that, yes, I drew, that I put together. And if you take a look closely, you'll see 7 different locations. They're with black dots, and those have, next to the black dots have the names of those World War I monuments. Those 8 individuals are the ones that died in combat in the Argonne Forest in France between 1917 and 1918. Another thing is, the reason why I showed you this on the map is because how far spread out they are. If you ask a lot of residents, especially the younger crowd, they have no idea where these monuments are located and what they're for, nor the history. Another thing, on the map itself, you'll see a yellow outline. So what I did there was, because there was a question, we had an individual who used to be part of the historical commission who said, I don't want anything done. I don't want any of the monuments moved. You're disrespecting the veterans. And the parade route goes through all these. First of all, I'm a veteran. My intent is never to disrespect veterans. All the Veterans Council are veterans. Their intent is never to disrespect veterans. And if anything, we're trying to better it. Second thing is, if you take a look at that yellow line, there is only one neighborhood monument that we ever pass, and that's the Fontaine Monument over there by the Center of Hope. So I'm going to turn it over real quick to Mr. Cohen to go over this memorial park, or the World War Memorial Park outline.
My name is Joe Cohen. I'm a landscape architect, and when Mr. Adams reached out to me about these parks, it's an interesting process because there's so many unique monuments and memorials. Some overlap. The architecture is different, the sizes are different, so it was a really interesting project on both fronts here. But to start off, World War Memorial Park. The centerpiece of this park, well, first of all, most everybody here is familiar, but World War Memorial Park faces Elm Street. It's across from the town hall. The firehouse is on the...
It's hard to hear you, so if you could just speak up just a little bit. I don't know if it's the microphone or not.
Yeah, is that...
Thank
okay. The firehouse is on the right-hand side. Dresser Street is on the far side with a row of residential houses in between. And the centerpiece of World War Memorial Park is the World War I monument, which you can see in the picture here on the right. It's a granite monument. It has some lighting in it. It's a unique architectural piece, very nice. So in this area, our concept wasn't to change too much. It was basically just to update the walkways to be ADA compliant. There's some existing picnic tables, square picnic tables with built-in seats that have fallen into disrepair that would need to be updated, again, for ADA compliance. There's some park benches, similar situation there. So the approach here was more minimalistic. Basically, let's clean up the monument, the World War I monument, kind of address the ADA issues, fix the pathways, and we saw a lot of traffic, pedestrian traffic between the municipal parking lot and Elm Street. So to address that by putting in an actual walkway, I think would be important and something we wanted to show in the concept. We also looked at using the Gold Star plaques along the circular path to kind of showcase those and kind of create a walkway where somebody could stop and, you know, take note of the 8 plaques. On the opposite side of the monument, we thought about creating a small bench seat where somebody could sit and look at this monument. Currently, there wasn't a place to stop. So we envisioned that similar materials, you know, to match the granite that's there. And then lastly, just to address the existing flagpole had rotted out. So the intent there is to replace that, and while we're replacing that, kind of move it over so it's more in line with the axis of the park through the existing World War I monument. So again, it was, you know, kind of more addressing maintenance and accessibility issues in this park. So a pretty minimalistic approach.
I just wanted to add a couple things to the War Memorial, the World War Memorial Park. When Joe talks about the Gold Star Mother plaques, we're talking about the neighborhood monuments because those are the individuals, those 8 individuals that have passed in combat. Another thing is, just recently we had to move another World War I monument or neighborhood monument to Oak Ridge Cemetery because of the rot and decay of the park. I believe it was on Crane and River Street. So to go on further here, the next park is Dresser Memorial Park. And again, I want to just go over the same thing. Do this little map here. What we did here was, I just wanted to show that though we have a lot of monuments within Dresser Memorial Park itself, we also have a lot of monuments that are outside of that, i.e. the Hiker Monument. A couple years, there's a huge $4 or $5 million tip project that's going to be a requirement to move the Hiker or the Spanish-American War monument to a different location. The Trustees, Soldiers, Sailors, Marines, and Airmen's Memorials Board has voted unanimously to have that moved over to Dresser Memorial Park, and Mass DOT at the last public hearing has been informed and has received a letter for them from the Trustees Board. Another thing is over at the Community Center, or the old Armory, there's a Franco-American, about 4 or 5, almost 700-pound bronze plaque, all in French, that commemorates those Franco-Americans that served in World War I that would go to Dresser Memorial Park. We also have 2 VFW monuments that are currently housed at the DPW that were gifted from Councilor Dow, or Joe Dow, a few years ago when he bought the old VFW. He gifted it to the town. We placed it over the DPW, and so those are sitting there on top of pallets, waiting for a new home. We also have the Italian American and Vietnam. One thing I mentioned earlier in the presentation was the fact that we have these beautiful monuments, and at the time there was a reason they put them there, and by all means, we don't intend to disrespect any monument that was dedicated in the past, but if you drive by them, you can't see who served. I mean, those are Southbridge residents, they're Italian American residents, they're Vietnam era Southbridge residents who served their country, and you can't drive by there and see the names, nor are you willing to send school-aged children across that way through the Gold Star Mother all the way to the Italian or to the Vietnam monument in fear of getting run over. Nor is there a walkway or a walk path over there. So we have decided we recommended to move those as well to Dresser Memorial Park. And the VFW, some of you remember, the VFW is still looking at providing 1 to 2 new monuments for Dresser Memorial Park in the near future. We're working with Pat Morrill on his ideas to dedicate to the town and gift to the town these 2 VFW monuments as well. So we have quite a few monuments without a home that need to find it. And as Joe will show you in the next design on Dresser Memorial Park, this is the drawing or design that it threw me back for a minute. But I think by the time we had a meeting and other veterans are there, I actually liked the idea. But one thing that I liked about it, there's room to grow. So we've talked about the Polish American monument that's over there across the street from Big Bunny. And if any time it was gifted to the town, there's plenty of room for that, or there's a home for that monument to go over to that park. So I'll turn it over to Joe for this.
Dresser Park, as it stands now, has the World War II Memorial to Vietnam. Excuse me. Has the Vietnam Korea monuments, the Veteran Auxiliary monuments, and a cannon display. So currently there's some parking, there's some pathways that are kind of started to fall apart, some granite curbing, decorative curbing on the back side of the sidewalk. It's a good-sized park. It seems fairly underutilized at the moment. The honor roll memorial, is used at Memorial Day. There's service down there, but there's a lot of opportunity on this site to really make a gesture, a big gesture, to include all these monuments and to display them, with the respect that they deserve. So, going into this, we kind of wanted to do 2 things here. One, to create that grand gesture, but also create a park in a traditional sense that has, the park amenities that people come to expect. So on the left-hand side is what I'm calling Memorial Park. Just for the sake of discussion, it's all one park, but that piece there, the inspiration was kind of in the vernacular of a formal parade ground that you would see, at various institutions, town squares, that kind of thing. So we wanted to use that concept and to use the landform in that space to create a park that stepped up in 3 tiers where we could display these monuments and organize them throughout so that it would draw people in. They would see the first monuments, and down on that first tier closest to the road, we anticipate the honor roll memorial to go there. And as somebody experiences that first space, they see the other monuments throughout the park and are drawn further back to see those monuments and explore those and, understand some of the history throughout. So we looked at, different ways to utilize the landscape there, whereas there is some significant grade change. The park goes up about 8 feet through the center access there. So how can we use that to our advantage and draw people in and bring them to a point where they can then get to the top and look out over the whole park and see all these monuments and tributes to, the residents of Southbridge. So the other side of the park, we wanted to address some of the existing parking, which the spaces are small, the ADA spaces are non-compliant just based on their dimensions. We wanted to add some site amenities, some park benches, a gazebo. There was some people that asked for, a spot for a nice gazebo, a picnic area, and then some paths to get people out where there's more passive recreation opportunities or, quiet spaces. We looked at lighting in the park in a similar sense, that we kind of want to frame these walkways in this space and kind of keep a very linear, formal approach. So on the top right-hand side, you can see, kind of a concept idea of the lighting there. We looked at the monuments that were potentially going to move, and we started to place those throughout the park, but I think in all honesty, we need to do some more work there. There's been a lot of conversation in the ongoing here that, some of them I think are going to move, some of them are going to stay. So, whereas this is conceptual level, that's something that we're going to continue to look at. So nothing, is set in stone there. This is just a quick video here I want to play that's just kind of a walk around, a 3D rendering of the Memorial Park space here. So just to narrate, this bottom level would be what you would see coming off of the sidewalk, the paving pattern, and where those people are standing would be the honor roll plaques. And then as you move in through the space, up the ramps, through the different, lawn spaces, there would be other memorials placed. As you get to the top tier, there's an overlook that looks out back over the rest of the space, some park benches, some new tree plantings. So just a brief look of where we are conceptually on that aspect of the project there. Excuse me. So I'll give it back to Councilor Adams.
Before I forget, I do want to thank Joe for all of his hard work dealing with a bunch of individuals that have no idea how to put something like this together. He's done a remarkable job and has educated us quite a bit on this process. I do want to mention that throughout both parks, some of the ideas that we came up with was cameras, obviously lighting, QR readers, actual historical areas where they're able to read it if they don't have a phone. Obviously, you saw the parking lot expand for school buses. So there's been quite a bit of thought process behind it. Also looking at putting street signs on the Memorial Park itself. We do have the living monument over there for the 7 servant boys that served. Obviously, we will never move that because it's a living monument, but we looked at doing it as a servant pathway or a servant path with 6 individuals with their names on a gray granite piece, and then one that died in North Africa during World War II with his name on it as well. And I've been in contact with the Servant family. So funding sources. So we've talked quite a bit, the Veterans Council, how we would go about doing this. And one thing, because it was our idea and a lot of veterans had partaken, we went from 3 veterans showing up to the meetings to 20 every month. So what we came up with was donations. We're not asking the town of Southbridge or the taxpayers immediately to come up with funds to pay for this. We're asking for donations through fundraising efforts, families, i.e. pavers, benches, gazebos, lights, whatever it may be. Also utilizing the fundraising process of the tiered system through our marketing team, either local or abroad, because there are a lot of not-for-profit organizations, veterans not-for-profit organizations out there that do this and help other organizations, veterans organizations, put these things together. Private grants and in-kind donations. I'm taking a class on Thursday on the Parkland grant and to see if we even qualify as a town to receive some type of grant like that, where we would apply. I think they go up to $10,000 non-matching, and after that, I believe it's matching funds. So we're looking at multiple sources, and if the town council approves tonight for us to move forward, we will start the donation process, the fundraising process. It may take a few days, but we'll start working on that with the marketing team. This hasn't been just the Veterans Council. It's been local residents who have partake in this, historical commission, local historians, the VFW post here, Franklin Realty, his marketing team, he's already assigned a project manager to the Veterans Council to help us out with this, conventures, events, communications, marketing, obviously Mr. Cohen here, local businesses, and our local attorney here who has helped read some of the deeds to make sure what I thought was accurate or not. So it has been a community affair already when it comes to this design, this idea for this initiative.